and welcome to AATB Draft Talk. And I want to introduce my co-host Tommy Barnett and our special guest LaVar Arrington. We want to thank you for coming on the show, and we really appreciate it.
Appreciate you guys having me on.
The first question that I have, it goes along. It's a draft show. To me, the best linebacker in the draft is another linebacker that wore 11. Micah Parsons. What kind of a player is Parsons? Like, you watch him on the field, he can do just about everything. And you watch that highlight, like we watched the highlight of you during your time at Penn State, and you saw a lot of. For me, I saw a lot of similarities in the game that he could do absolutely everything on the field. And I know you're close with him. What kind of a player is Micah?
Micah is. He's complete. He's able to rush. He's able to tackle. He's able to cover. So he's a trifecta. So he's a complete guy. He has a defensive ends background. Played defensive end in high school. Transitioned seamlessly and effortlessly into a linebacker at the college level. Probably taking the athleticism that he had because he was a tailback. And I think anybody who plays defense that was a tailback when they were in high school or at some point prominently during their playing days, I think they make the best defensive players. So he had a lot of background, a lot of time developing a lot of skill. And I think that you've seen that play out with the way he plays on the field. But I would also say people probably aren't aware of how intelligent a football player that he is. His football IQ, if you ever sit and talk to him about breaking down and understanding the game, how it's run by formation, how it's dictated by personnel groupings. The kid is really sharp. He's really sharp. He's a student of the game and he's a fan of the game. So, I would say he's complete.
Since you say that he's like a complete player, he has like basically the full package to him. Do you think there's any player in the league currently now that can compare to him or someone you played with in your career?
He's like I don't want to do this, but it's really what I think. He's like a Ray Lewis that can blitz. Okay. He's like a Ray Lewis that can blitz. Like he gets to the ball. Like if you watch his film, obviously he set a school record, by being the first freshman to ever lead the team in tackles. So he's always getting up off of the ball. And if you watched Ray was always getting up off of the ball, but Micah Parsons can also pass rush. So it's the closest comparison maybe.
You talk about that, and the one thing, if people who didn't watch a lot of Penn State games last year, that bowl game against Memphis when they played in 2019, the bowl game, and what he did on it, I feel like it elevated what he could do and what a lot of the people who didn't watch a lot of Penn State, and know a lot about Micah. And I feel like that game really shot his stock way up as being one of the top linebackers coming out.
Micah's deceptive. When you watch games like that, you'll see some of the big plays that he makes and not even realize how many tackles he's had in the game, or, he impacts the game in a way where you don't even see it happening. So he's not like one of those guys that's like really he's not noisy with how he plays. If Micah was more of a self-attention drawing type of guy, he would probably be talked about so much more than what he is right now. And so when you see his game is kind of deceptive. It's almost like you got to watch him twice to appreciate him.
No, that's like talk. I want to bring up another player who's draft eligible, Jason Owa, who played Penn State as well. And we're going to be talking. Tommy and I, we're going to later on in this show, we're going to be talking about the edge rushers, the defensive end prospects. And I know you firsthand able to watch him and know of him. Like, what kind of a player is like? I feel he's a player that a lot of people don't know about, but his ceiling is an all-pro type of level, just of what he can do on the field.
I mean, athletically speaking, he's like the freak. He's like Javon. Like, and for those who think I'm kidding, they said that Javon ran like a low 4.3 40, something crazy, like mid to low. Jason Owe is going to run. He might touch 4.3. He might touch 4.3.
Man,
so I'll drop the mic with that, and I'll say if he doesn't get it, he will be very close. And that just tells you the type of explosiveness off of the ball, potentially speaking, that you're going to get in Jason Owe. And he took some really great strides. If you watch his game film this year, although there were some, obviously some dark moments for this season, if you watch Jason Owe's film, he did some really, really good things every single game. Every game. Whether it was his technique, his use of his hands, his flushing the plays, rushing the quarterback. There had to have been at least 4 or 5 times every single game that he was literally a half a step away from getting a sack on the play. And I think that just goes to say the capabilities and the potential of Jason Owe. His upside is it's pretty staggering. I'm high on him. I'm pretty high on him.
How high do you have him up in your rankings? Do you think he's one of the top guys, could go first round this year?
I think he goes first round. And I think he goes first round just based off of what the tangibles of who he is, the capabilities of who he is, and what that represents. It certainly will bode well for his draft grade after the pro day. So to me, he definitely will be a first round guy.
So, looking at the NFL and my big thing with you as being a linebacker in the league and knowing that position, how do you think the game has changed since you last played to what it is now? With linebackers, you don't see a lot of 3 linebacker sets. You see a lot of the 2 linebackers, and basically the linebacker position is, there's a hybrid here, and there's a lot of differences. And I know you do a lot for FS1, talking about sports and everything like that with football and all. What do you say, like the linebacker position now than what it used to be?
Well, you don't have to be as big as linebackers were at one point in time. You have to be mobile. You have to be able to cover because it's a passing league. It's a passing league now. So it's just one of those things where you got to be mobile. You still have to have a really, really good ability in a sense of being able to shed off blockers because they're still going to try to run. But for the most part, you still have to be a guy that can be able to cover really well, tackle in space with everything that's going on. And that's, to me, I think that's the evolution of the position because you generally needed a physical, a guy that could handle 300-pound linemen and be able to stuff the run first and take on tight ends. It's not as physical a game that way anymore. It's really evolved into really being able to elude and to be able to pursue and to cover. That's prominent now.
Yeah, we're not going to see any more of the big Levon Kirkland, almost 300-pound middle linebackers anymore. The game's kind of
I mean,
gone away from that.
everything cycles. Everything cycles. So you never know. They may bring the fullback back. They may bring the prominence of the H-back back. They may go to a three back set. Who knows? Things repeat themselves. So it's just what the sign of the times call for. You know what I mean? Supply and demand.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree with you with that. Now, I want your feeling that we do a lot of Eagle stuff here, and Jalen Hurts is right now the quarterback number 1 for the Eagles. I want your thoughts on him as what you see, because I see a lot of poise and he's out working out. He's doing a lot of things, and just watching him last year, yeah, the Eagles were very bad, 4-11-1. There's no ifs, ands, buts about that. But watching him and his poise for a rookie that hardly had any OTAs with the pandemic and everything that went on, what do you see in Jalen Hurts as the quarterback?
Well, I'll say this. I was high on him coming out of college. I'm a fan of his play. I'm a fan of how he handles adversity. He showed in college that, he's the ultimate team player and someone who has an old soul, a level of maturity that is commendable. Seeing him get out there, it's one of those things. He had one win as a starter, and that was a big win. That was a significant win. That was an immediate signature win, being able to go into New Orleans and win. But then he cooled off a little bit, and I don't know if that was a product of what was going on as a whole for the team. I don't know if it was the defenses caught up to him once he became a starter. I think this is a very pivotal year for him to prove that he can not only be a starter in this league, but can actually be trusted and depended on to be, on the level of a franchise guy. And I do believe he has the ability and the talent to be able to prove that. But I think this is a very early but yet very pivotal year for Jalen Hurts.
So if you're the Eagles, you stick with Jalen Hurts. You try to develop him instead of drafting a quarterback, trading up.
I think that's up to the coach. You bring in a new coach. He didn't draft him, and even though he was somewhat of a high draft pick, it wasn't high enough where you have to marry yourself to him. So I think that comes down to the comfort level of the coach and what he believes Jalen Hurts brings to the table.
So I want to question with you, so a lot of people are talking about like the top quarterbacks in the draft. Do you see a super movement of basically Lawrence number 1 to Jacksonville, and then after that, do you see a quarterback run, or how would you usually see the board playing out?
I'm going to say linemen.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking linemen are going to still be a necessity early on in this year's draft. I don't have the names handy in terms of breaking down the prospects at the offensive line position, but I would assume that if this is a strong enough class in terms of good linemen, I would assume early on, whether it be an Alabama or an Iowa or Wisconsin guy or Michigan, I would assume, or even Penn State, maybe not so high in the first round. But, I can see O-lineman, edge rusher maybe this year. I think an edge rusher will go early. Hopefully a linebacker goes early. That would be nice to see.
So I want to thank you for coming on. I do have one more question before we let you go.
Sure.
It's going to be not talk about the draft, but more about the college aspect. As I'm wearing my Penn State shirt, I have to always represent Penn State. It's wonderful.
There you go.
Exactly.
We are.
I want your feeling on on them going into next year, and what kind of a team that they have, because they also have a bunch of players that are going to be prospects in next year's draft as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want your feeling on. I want to go with the linebacker position again. Jesse Luketa is another big. He's a huge linebacker, but he does so many things on the field.
Yeah. I'm excited about Jesse. I like Ellis as well. I like Brandon. I mean, I know you're probably going to run down the whole list, so I'll just jump on it.
Go right ahead.
I think they have the makings of a special group, but they're going to have to come together, and they're going to have to really, really make the commitment that that's what they want to do and that's what they want to be. I think individually, they're amazing talents, and Jesse Luketa is a leader. Jesse Luketa is one of those guys that you love to have him as a player on your team, kind of like a throwback mentality. Brandon is like, he's the movie star. He's the bright lights. He's the sunglasses and the convertible, car. And that's pretty dope, and that's their games, Ellis is like more of a hard hat, lunch pail type of dude, more blue collar in his approach, and very, very smart, very, very understanding, learning on the game. So I like, and then you got young guys, that are in the mix as well, that will be making entries this season. So, I think the linebacking core looks amazing. I'll be interested to see what our defensive front will look like. I still have to do some homework on what that looks like now moving forward. I know there's some pretty good young talent, but I'll have to go into my little, my huddle study deal to kind of get a little bit more acquainted with the guys that are coming out this year. And same with the secondary, some new guys, but Porter is, I think this is going to be a very, very big year for him, defining what he's got going on. Castro coming back, that's big time. He's a big time player. I love his game. I love who he is as a person. So I mean,
Brisker coming back too helps.
What's that?
Brisker coming back too helps as well.
It's some really, really, to me, I think there's some really, really encouraging aspects of the Penn State defense to focus in on. I think they can be as good as they want to be, and I think Coach Franklin has, looking at some of the decision that he's made this offseason and personnel changes and different things like that, guys they've gone after in the transfer portal, it looks as though the philosophy is evolving in the right direction. I think we would all say that we saw some of the concerns that maybe was holding the team back this year, and it looks like he's addressed those issues as we've moved forward.
And exactly. And I want to thank you again, LaVar.
I appreciate you guys having me on.
I know your answer. Best atmosphere in college football, State College, whiteout at night.
Absolutely. We got to get back to it.
Exactly. I agree
fly,
with you.
Fly, Eagles, fly.
There we go.
Yeah,
Take care.
All right, you guys.
Thanks for joining us.
All right,
Thanks
guys.
for joining us.
Yes, sir. All right.
Alrighty, and it was great hearing from him talk about the linebacker process, talk about Parsons. We spoke about Parsons last week with Soko's rankings, and we're going to get into Owa, who he also talked very highly of as well. So I'm going to turn over to you, Tommy, since we talked about edge guys, so these are going to be your edge prospect guys. So your number one edge rusher is the guy that you're very high on. I know that. We said it the whole time. You've been super high on this guy.
Yeah, if you've been watching AATB Draft Talk, I'm pretty high on Kwity Paye out of Michigan. I think I'm higher on him, and the media is a bit higher than him in the league, though. A lot of the league, I've seen Daniel Jeremiah kind of has him more towards bottom in the first, but I like him. I think he's already a pro-ready run defender, and he really already shows those flashes of a pass rusher. 22 pressures in 4 games this year. He only had 2 sacks. Both came in the first game against Minnesota, but He over the last 2 seasons, he has the highest pass rush win rate of any player in the Big Ten, and he's second highest of any player in the league, just behind Chase Young with a 26.5%. Also, former Michigan defensive coordinator Don Brown, he once called him the smartest football player that he's ever coached. And that guy's been coaching since 1972. So,
and he's had some pretty good productive players recently come out, Chase Winovich and Rashawn Gary. So, he's had some pretty good players come out recently, but that's super high praise. On a player like Palich, he has all the makings, he has all the tools to be, one of those elite pass rushers. But I feel like these rankings, all these pass rushers can kind of intertwine and basically interchange each other in terms of the numbers, because I feel like this class is so deep, and if you're a team that needs pass rushers, this is the class you're going to get it. And Jason Sullivan's, he's also a Michigan State guy, so he doesn't think too highly of Don Brown. But I'm not a Michigan fan, so it's okay. That's why I'll give that. But your number 2 guy is a guy from Georgia.
Number 2, I have Azeez Ojulari. I think he has the highest sack rate among edge defenders with 4.7% of his snaps. He gets the pressure. He plays with a high motor, as you see in the film here. Great burst off the line of scrimmage. He's a big playmaker, 4 forced fumbles last season. I think right now he weighs at around 240, and he mostly wins with his speed and athleticism at the point of the pass rush. If he's able to develop more of a technique besides just winning with his speed, I think that he could be a double-digit sack guy at the next level. He's going to have to increase his play strength a little bit too. But the fact that he's flashing at such a young age as a redshirt sophomore, I feel like that offers up a lot to his development, where he could be a big play guy.
And you saw it in the film too. Like, one thing about, he's a super flexible rusher. He bends and he uses that speed. I feel like he fits on a 3-4. It's just where his size is right now. That's kind of where where he fits. But he's a player that I know I saw him earlier in the middle of the first round, but I feel like he's more towards that around 20 to 25 range. But he's kind of slowly moving his way up. Your next guy is
number 3. I have Jalen Phillips. He's a former 5-star recruit. He was originally with UCLA. He banged up his whole career. He transferred to Miami this year, which is where he finally started to shine and show the play that he can be. He came on really hot over the last 4 games of the season with 8 sacks. The biggest concern with him, though, is going to be his medicals. He had 3 concussions, severe wrist injury from a moped accident, sprains in both of his ankles, and I think he had that wrist injury I was speaking about. But the 3rd concussion actually forced him to medically retire at one point. So having him at 3 isn't really an indictment of what I think of his play style. I think it's more of his injury history. Obviously, Johnny and I don't have the full scoop that the NFL does here, but there's got to be huge concerns with him medically.
Yeah, and like you said, he came on like last year, and it was interesting to see. What helped him was the next guy on your list not playing. Rousseau not playing. Because they had Quincy Roche and Rousseau and Phillips, and so there was a lot of talent there in Miami, but Phillips really got to show off and showcase that, and that's what moved him up a lot of boards. But your number 4 guy is a guy I just mentioned.
Yeah, Gregory Rousseau, sticking with the Miami pass rushers, but I think he opted out this season. He showed a lot of promise last year. Great length at 6'6", 260. He played a bit all over Miami's front of the line. He lined up on the edge. They also snuck him in on the interior. At his weight, though, I don't really see him lining up in the interior at the next level. One thing I'm not a big fan, though, a lot of his pressures, they all come from when he's lined up in the interior, or they're kind of cleanup sacks. But he offers a lot of potential based on his length and his skill set with only 1 season. So I think that there's a chance that he's more prediction over production right now, since we only have that 1 season of film.
Yeah, and super long, lean defensive end. I feel like he's got the frame to add some weight as well. So, what you said was right. Like a lot of his sacks weren't beating the guy. It was the cleanup sacks, and um, a lot of people had him as a number one defensive end edge rusher in the class going into 2020, and then he sat out, and I feel like I feel like it's kind of dropped him a tiny bit. Unfortunately, that hurt him a little bit. But my thing is, I still think he gets picked in the first round. He still has first round talent. That frame, that size. I feel that a lot of teams are gonna be one to actually look at him and say he could develop into something, especially with his size.
Yeah, I'd say he's a first rounder for sure.
Yeah. Your next guy is a guy that's, as I've seen, has been rising up a lot of boards, and I know you're really high on him. Another guy that you're pretty high on, but we'll get right into there.
So number 5, we have Ronnie Perkins out of Oklahoma. Oklahoma's defense just saw massive improvement once he returned from his suspension. He's another guy with a high pass rush win rate, 24.7%, fourth highest over the last 2 seasons. I feel like he already has elite traits against the run and the pass. I've seen him mocked all over the place, though. I think the league is higher on him than the media. Jeremiah had him kind of near the end of round 1, but I've seen some guys kind of throw him out as a 3rd or 4th round guy. But based on the impact that he had when he returned, like Oklahoma's defense was a mess. They were giving up like 30 points a game, came back. They're averaging probably around 14 points a game. Those are just numbers roughly off the top of my head, but he's just a disruptive playmaker. He has a blend of strength, power, athleticism. And I think he could just be a double-digit sack guy at the next level.
And what you said was great against the pass and the run, which for me, that's what you said with a lot of teams having him a lot higher than what the media has him. And when a guy like Daniel Jeremiah puts him in a mock draft, late in a mock draft, or he puts a obscure name that you're not thinking about, he's got ears around the league. So he knows, he's listening, he's hearing what teams are saying, what executives are saying. So that puts a lot of stock into that as well, where a player is going to be positioned to go. But no, you're right. I've seen people put him in like the 3rd round, sneaking possibly in the beginning of the 4th round. I have seen that. I'm not quick to put him that low. For me, I have him in the 2nd round, going in like around the middle of the 2nd round. That's kind of where I have where I see him going. But no, for him, the sky's the limit. He's slowly rising his way up the draft board.
I feel like it's more because he doesn't have like the flashy traits. He's just more of a consistent winner.
Yeah. No, you're
he
right.
Doesn't have like that speed or insane athleticism. He's just consistently pretty good to great at everything he does.
Yeah. And the next guy is a guy that I really like from Wake Forest. Go ahead.
Carlos Boogie Basham. He had a little bit of a down season compared to last year, but he's another player. He has a good football IQ. He actually had a streak of 23 straight games with a tackle for a loss. Pressure. He had a pressure on the quarterback in all 34 games at Wake Forest and throughout his career. Great wingspan, 81 inches, a powerful rusher. He had over, I think, 60 pressures last year, around 40 this year. But I think he's one of those guys where since he had a little bit of a down year, people are kind of forgetting what he was able to put together last year. He just saw more attention this year than he was typically used to. And I think that's why he kind of took a little bit of a fall this year. But he's still pretty consistent edge rusher, good against the pass, good against the run.
Yeah, I think he can be great in all phases of the game. And he's the type of player that if he's available when the Eagles pick in the 2nd round, he's the type of player that I would absolutely want on the Eagles because he fits the type of defense that Gannon wants to run. Have a bigger and he weighed a lot heavier than I thought he was going to weigh.
281, I think it was.
Exactly, which I thought he was in like the 250s range, but he weighed in a lot heavier. So, but I feel like he's a guy that'll go in the 2nd round in the draft, and someone that I think would fit perfectly in Philadelphia. The next guy is a guy that we spoke to LaVar about, Jason Owa.
Yeah, like LaVar was touching on, I love the athletic upside, even though he hasn't flashed it 100% all on the field yet to be that dominant player yet. But he's still only a redshirt sophomore, only played about 20 games so far. I think early on, you're going to see him kind of pigeonholed into a situational pass rusher. It's going to take him a little bit of time to develop against a run. But I feel like he should get better as he adds more strength. Some of the measurables, I just want to point, like we're talking about how athletic he is. LaVar saying 4.3. I think he was timed once at 4.33 in the 40. He has a 36.5-inch vertical and 127-inch broad jump, which just shows how much explosiveness he actually has in him that just hasn't been tapped in yet. Once he's able to develop some technique from coaching at the next level, I mean, there's a lot of potential there. It's just not fully tapped yet.
And the thing is, what's his size? Because people are seeing those numbers, they're thinking, he must be a super light, super lean, like really small type of guy, which is not.
Yeah, he's 6'5", and I think around like 250.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's not like it's like a 220 off-ball linebacker. I mean, he's a big dude who could take some blocks on.
Yeah, and that like what he said with that, and I know he ran in the 4.3s. That's absolutely nuts for someone that size to be able to be that quick, that fast. Like I said, redshirt sophomore, his development for me, his ceiling, all pro level, just with everything, his makeup, his speed, the elusiveness, the athleticism, all that is there. So the sky's the limit for him. And that's why I see him going the late first. I could see him definitely sneaking into that late first round range just because of the measurables and the athleticism. It's off the charts.
Yeah.
Your next guy is Joseph Osai from Texas.
Osai, 6'3", 245, junior out of Texas. I feel like his pass rush moves aren't fully developed yet, but he is a decent pass rusher. He's more of one of those well-balanced players. He's decent against the run, decent in coverage. He just doesn't have any of those elite traits that really stand out and wow you the way Jason Owa does. He has a knack for making plays, though. 3 forced fumbles this year, and it just seems like he's always around the ball. He had those 3 forced fumbles this year, the fumble recovery, 2 pass deflections, so he could decent coverage. And last year, he also had 2 picks. Very good against the run, 29 tackles for a loss over the last 2 seasons also. So I feel like he's going to fit in nicely as a 3-4 edge rusher somewhere for a team.
Yeah, and with him, he played a lot. Like, it wasn't just one position. He took some snaps at inside linebacker.
Yep.
He took some snaps, all over the defensive line. So it wasn't like it was one set position for him. So that may have hurt a tiny bit in terms of being able to watch him, and you're only able to see him in a number of things. You're not able to see him in one set position where he could basically show you a lot more than what he can do at all different positions. But no, he's a player that's a developmental player that could absolutely be one of the top rushers in this class. Like I said, this pass rush class is so deep, and the top end of it is pretty loaded and everything, but you can get down into the 4th and 5th round and still find a guy that can be productive for you. That's how deep this class is. Not so deep as the defensive tackle class, which we may touch on. A couple of the guys, but your last guy, your 10th guy.
We're only on number 9. Number 9, Patrick Jones out of Pittsburgh. 24 tackles for a loss, 17.5 sacks in the last 22 games. I think he's a little scheme dependent. He's kind of limited to a 4-3 defensive end. He doesn't really have that experience in coverage right now, but he's a solid run defender. 62 pressures and 10 sacks in 2019. So he took a little bit of a dip this year with only 39 pressures and 9 sacks. But I think the potential is still there. He took more of a step back this season just because they lost one of their defensive tackles to an opt-out Jalen Twyman, he takes a lot of pressure off with his pass rush skills, in my opinion.
Well, yeah, Pittsburgh had, and that video wasn't uploaded, so we didn't have that one to go over his video of it. But 80-inch wingspan. The Senior Bowl helped him a little bit, I feel, but Pittsburgh had really good ends with Weaver coming back from an injury,
Yep.
and then having Jones on the other side. Jones is the bigger of the two guys, but they both just cause havoc, and it's just he's always, Jones can play in either or. He could play in a 3-4 or he could play in a 4-3. He's not scheme dependent. So I think Jones is a very intriguing player, and has the size and the skill set to do anything for any defense that were to draft him. So for that, that benefits him because he can do anything no matter what defense the team that drafts him plays. Now to your number 10 guy from Oregon State.
Number 10, Hamilcar Rashid. So I think he is one of the oddest case studies in this draft. There was just a huge drop off in his production this year. You just don't really ever see anything like that. So last season, 14 sacks, 22.5 tackles for a loss. And this season, in 7 games, he had no sacks, 2 tackles for a loss, and only pressured a quarterback 8 times. So there's still a lot to like about him based off of last season. It's just really, we don't know what to expect out of him going forward. He did play through injury this season, so I feel like that's what mostly hurt his performance this year. But there's no way to really know for sure until his medicals are checked. But last season, like he has a lot of speed, as you saw in the videos. If he's able to reach the production that he reached last year, he was more of a late first, maybe second rounder coming into this season. What we saw in film was more of like a 5th or a 6th rounder, if that. So it's kind of hard to gauge where the stock really ends up. But if you get the player you got last year, you're getting a steal.
Yeah, and for him, I feel he's a player that will fit in a 3-4, being able to be an edge guy, edge rusher. I just feel his size. He is undersized. Like you said, the production, to go from 14 sacks to then go to 0. I know it was only 7 games, but I think a lot of scouts are going to see that. They're going to look at that, and it may drop him down a little bit. He may go in, the late 2nd, possibly into the 3rd round, depending. But you're right. It is a weird case study, looking at that, and you usually don't see a huge drop off unless there's an injury. So, and again, was he playing hurt? Was he, trying to battle through some injuries? But no, he's definitely an interesting one to think about. And like I said, these last couple of guys, you could put so many different names. Like looking at this edge class, I was looking at guys like Shaka Toney from Penn State, Quincy Roche, Joe Tryon, Rashad Weaver, Peyton Turner, Ellison Smith, Dalen Hayes, Janarius Robinson, Taron Jackson. That's another handful of guys. That's basically another top 10 of players. And, out of those guys, who intrigues you the most?
I'm going to go with a guy that you didn't really touch on yet there, just because I want to throw it out and it'll be a little bit different. I feel he's another guy where
Chris Rumph, right?
Yep, I was going to say his draft stock all over the place. You could see him going anywhere from the 2nd or the 7th. He's an interesting case study because he's a fantastic pass rusher, but the thing with him is he only weighs 225. So there's not really many guys you see come in and play every snap at that kind of size as an edge rusher, but he's just so good at what he does where I think he could fit in as a situational pass rusher. It's kind of hard to really assess where his value is because of that. If you look last year,
Duke also had another rusher on the other side too. So
yeah.
He had another really talented player on the other side. So for Rumph, it's like I said, the size. He's going to be dependent on a team to draft him and use him as a specialist, unless he can gain some weight. And 225 is pretty small if you're going to be an edge rusher. Not every down, but if he's using as a situational pass rusher, kind of like when the Cowboys, Randy Gregory, when he came in, he was a long, lean, I think he was like 235, defensive end coming in, gained a little bit of weight, and then is turning into a decent pass rusher. Something Rumph Rumph can look at and, put a little bit of pounds. He has the frame to be able to put the pounds on and then to be that situational pass rusher for a team that drafts him.
Yeah, he reminds me a little bit of Carter Coughlin, who's a guy I was really high on coming out last year. He ended up going to my Giants in I think it was the 6th or 7th round. But he was another undersized edge rusher coming out who just kind of won consistently the same way Rumph does. So I'm interested to see where Rumph ends up and how he's able to produce at the next level at that size.
Yeah, and any other guys that you want to talk about in the defensive end class? Because I feel like the Senior Bowl really helped people open their eyes to some of these other prospects, like the Dalen Hayes and the Janarius Robinson, Ellerson Smith, Peyton Turner. These guys, really showed. Like I really like Ellerson Smith. I like his size. I feel like he can fit. The way I look at prospects too is I'll look at them and how they'll fit, my team as well. And if it's a player that, possibly can fit, I'll really do a little, deeper dive onto what kind of a player and like what they do. And Ellerson Smith is a player that would fit perfect. A bigger defensive end, can play the run, but he showed pass rush skills, but he uses his size. So and you saw it in the practice tape with the Senior Bowl. So he's a player I really like. I'm high on. I think I'm maybe higher than most when it comes to him, but he's one guy that I'm really, and of course, I don't want to always say I'm super high on Penn State players, but I watch every Penn State game. So, I watch all these guys, but Shaka Toney, when he's playing Indiana, he plays out of his mind because he seems like he gets 5 sacks a game when he plays against one team. But he's another one. I think he's in that Chris Rumph thing where he's got that underside. He's not. I think he's like 235, maybe. He's a little undersized, but his burst and his get off is so fast. He's another player that could go higher than expected. Not saying he's going in the first round, but I mean he can go higher in the middle rounds, in the late second possibly, because of the speed and because of what he can do for a lot of defenses in using a pass rush specialist. Because a lot of teams rotate defensive linemen now, defensive ends, and try to get the pass rush
fresh.
Exactly, keeping them fresh, and it's just something that you see a lot of, which bodes well for this class because a lot of teams like to use 3, 4, 5 different defensive ends to keep, like you said, to keep them fresh. And this class is going to help that because there's a lot of talent up and down this board. We could talk a little bit about defensive tackles. It's not
all right.
It's not super deep. The thing is, like with these defensive tackles, like you and I spoke about it. There's no game change. There isn't a super game. There isn't a Derek Brown. There isn't that type of player that's off the charts. There's a number of really solid players that could be productive NFL players. But, the 2 guys I like are Davian Nixon and Christian Barmore from Nixon from Iowa and Barmore from Alabama. But, just the first guy here, Barmore, it's tough because he didn't play, like Alabama liked to rotate, so he didn't play as much as you'd like. He had a little bit of injuries, but he could play the 1 technique, he could play the 3 technique, he could play the 5 technique. So he's very versatile and he could fit in any defense that were to draft him. So for me, I think he's going to be the first defensive tackle that will be drafted. That's just my opinion there. And I feel like the game against Notre Dame really helped him shine a little bit, especially when you're on a national stage like that. We saw it when Josh Jacobs went off on Clemson when on that national stage. But I think Barmore is one of those guys. I think he's going to go in the first round, possibly later in the first round. But I think he may be the only one. I think Nixon will slide to round 2. But what are your feelings on Barmore?
I feel like he helped himself a lot over the last few weeks of the season with his sack in the last 5 of his last 6 games. Also, I think playing for Alabama, you're always going to catch everyone's attention, especially with the production they've gotten out of guys the last couple of years. I mean, we've seen Quinnen Williams, Sean Robinson, Raekwon Davis, Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne. Like every year they have some kind of defensive lineman that comes out and impresses. So I'm impressed with Barmore too. I feel like he's kind of the next up in that level of players and probably the most gifted pass rush wise out of anyone in this class, defensive tackle wise.
Exactly. And the number 2 guy, for me, Davian Nixon, I think he really showed out in this, pandemic shortened season. He really showed out, and he was, lighting up, during the games. And, he just flashes. He has the flash. He has that ability, right there to read and react. And I just feel like he could slip into the late first, but I think he's going to be a second round selection. He's one of the few things with him is the production, and of course, I remember this play against Penn State, just what he did, and you could see that. You could see he's quick. He has the quickness and the elusiveness, and I just feel that he's a player that is rising. He may rise above Barmore in terms of where he's drafted. But for me, I have him at number 2 just because Barmore and what he's shown on the national stage against SEC opponents and what he's done. I put him just a little bit ahead of Nixon. But for me, those guys are like neck and neck. They're right there, 1A, 1B. I don't know how you feel in terms of the defensive tackle rankings. Do you think those guys are the 1-2, or do you like Wilson, or do you like?
I have Barmore. Barmore is my consensus 1. For my number 2, I feel like that's where there's kind of like that next tier where you can talk like, okay, is it Nixon? Is it Levi Onwuzurike? Is it Wilson? Is it Tufle? Even Jalen Twyman, we talked about him a little bit earlier out of Pitt. I feel like that's kind of the next tier where Barmore's kind of in a league of his own. But I like Jalen Twyman, as I touched on a little bit earlier out of Pitt. He opted out this year, so people kind of forget how good he is as a pass rusher. 11 sacks last season, and he doesn't win with just power or speed. He has like a well-developed arsenal of moves that he's able to use and win with. I feel like I'd probably actually put him in number 2 if he didn't opt out. I was reading Trevor Sakema from NFL Draft Network. He was actually saying Twyman has put on 20 pounds in the offseason, which I kind of thought he needed to add a little bit of weight to improve himself as a run defender. So I'm kind of hoping to see, like, I'm a little worried if he's going to still have the same pass rush technique with an extra 20 pounds on him, if he's going to be the same player.
Yeah.
But if he's able to do what he can do now, 20 pounds heavier, improve himself in the run game, I feel like he has like that number 2 spot for me. I just don't know yet because we don't have the film of it.
Yeah. And who would you say is a sleeper defensive tackle?
Sleeper defensive tackle. William McNeil, I like.
A lot of people pretty high on him.
Yeah. So I feel like he's still learning the position a little bit. He played a little bit of running back, linebacker in high school. I like kind of like that versatility, though, like kind of like LaVar was saying, that kind of helps you, I feel. But I feel like he's already very, very good against the run, and there's room for him to grow as a pass rusher. He kind of needs to reform his technique a little bit. 7 sacks last year, none this year. But I feel like him as a run defender and the potential to grow as a pass rusher, I like him as a sleeper in the later rounds.
A player I like, we talked about him when he was Senior Bowl, Cam Sample. He's kind of a tweener. He's a little bit of a bigger end to possibly playing a little defensive tackle, but he's great with the shedding of blocks and a super active hands. And we saw him going up against the interior offensive lineman at the Senior Bowl, and he was making them look silly. He was able to get the pressure. He was able to use his moves. And I feel like his repertoire of moves are a lot higher to see some of the guys coming in. But he really showed what he can do on, playing for Tulane. You don't get that much, big notoriety big primetime games or anything like that. So he's a guy that I'd like in the later rounds of a sleeper. Like you say, he's my Taron Jackson of the defensive tackles.
Yeah, as you were talking about him, that's exactly who I was thinking of. I was like, wow, he didn't throw him out there when we were talking edge rushers.
I know, I didn't throw him out there. I think I've talked enough about him, so I don't have to go too deep into discussing him again. But maybe if the Eagles draft him, I have to get myself a Taron Jackson jersey. So
I'm sure we'll see it next year, hanging right behind you on AAT draft talk.
But so that kind of breaks down the edge rushers and defensive tackles. Next week we're going to do a pre-free agency mock draft. So it's going to be fun because we haven't done one in a little bit. So it gives us that basically before all the big free agent moves and all that happens, we're going to go and do our mock draft that's going to be 100% wrong. So then we can just come back and do another one after the free agency moves. But definitely want to do a pre-free agency mock draft to kind of outline kind of where, because a lot of teams are cutting some players. They're doing some releases, doing the cap casualties. So it gives us a chance to start, doing some mock drafts. And with some of these pro days that are happening and all these combines and, everything that they're doing, it gives us some, it'll kind of see where these players are going to align themselves, according to us, of course, who don't know anything. We'll say that. We don't know where they're going. But Tommy and I are going to alternate picks, so it should be a fun show. I want to thank all the people that, support us and everything, everyone who follows us, everyone who comments. We absolutely appreciate it. Make sure you check out aatbirds.com for all the latest. Also, make sure on aatbirds.com, you can also send any one of us a direct message or anything. We're doing a March Madness tournament, AAT Birds Bracket Challenge. So if you want to get in on it, the rules are on the website, but some quick little synopsis of it is $5 buy-in. You can have as many brackets as you want. You just got to send one of us a message. You just got to. Everything is in the article, but if you want to message one of us, we can certainly help you out as well. But that's definitely something to keep an eye on. But just make sure you tune into all the shows. We got a lot of great shows. We have Chips and Dish on Monday night. We have Fairway to Heaven on Tuesdays. We have our AT Birds weekly show on Wednesdays, and we have our on Thursday.
New show.
Yeah, I'll get to that one. That's a good one. That's a good show. On Thursday, we're gonna have our Eagles Vault show is gonna come back this upcoming week. We're gonna have David Akers on to talk about everything Philadelphia Eagles. Maybe dig in some stories. So that should be a fun show. Make sure you keep an eye on that. I don't have an exact time yet. I'll know on Monday the exact time. So just keep your eyes peeled for that. We'll make sure we are out there promoting that. Fridays, a YouTube exclusively. We have Eagle Jeff and Peanut. They have their Birds, Beer, and BS show. If you go on YouTube, the 2 episodes are up from the last 2 weeks. They're pretty good shows. You have to definitely tune into that. Subscribe. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. All I gotta say is Jeff behind the mic, getting a little heated, is gold. So it's something you definitely have to check out. I know Tommy can agree with me on that. We know for sure.
Yeah, but it's a fun watch though. I enjoy the new show.
It's a great show. So make sure you're subscribing to the YouTube channel, and
you can always catch replays of us if you miss us too. All the shows are up on YouTube too. So make sure you do like and subscribe.
Exactly. And our show comes back on next Saturday night. So I want to thank everyone who supports us. We appreciate it. And I'm going to go with Go Birds.